And now we will have a little conversation, including some of the individuals that I mentioned earlier of Music Declares Emergency, Dansk Naturfredningsforening, and and the last one being GENTS. And this is to look at all of the different pillars of the music catalyzers, GENTS, who bring together community through that medium, music. Looking at Music Declares Emergency, which represents the music industry and the actions and the activism that they inspire there. And the third being the nature conservation. So looking at how does the music industry relate to climate action and how can one inspire the other. And this conversation will be led by Daniel from the Imagine 5 team. So I will welcome him and he will introduce them more into detail. So thank you. Welcome up.
We at Imagine 5 have been looking forward to this day for a long time now. And not least because this was, to begin with, also an experiment. How do you design an event where parties from different sectors come together and cross-pollinate? And to me, hosting this panel is an honor because I think that I'm flanked by special talents here, talents in emotion and expression, talents in the science of what needs to be done, and a talent when it comes to mobilizing. I know you're a great mobilizer as well, Maria, but Lewis has succeeded in mobilizing a business that consists of very individual minds, perhaps, and we're not used to taking part in the space. And for those of you who don't know what the declaration that MDE, Music Declares Emergency, is about, we have it on the screen here behind us. And I think it's really well made in that it's strong, concise, and that most people would be able to get behind this. So when it's stated like this, it's really not difficult to say, yes, I will sign this declaration, and I can definitely stand behind this message. I encourage you to go to Music Declares Emergency's website and read more about it for yourself. But if we could have the next slide, you can see that it has been received as such a powerful declaration that 3,410 artists, a lot of organizations and individuals have already gotten behind it. And even though you're not necessarily musical artists yourselves, you can also go online and sign this declaration, thereby putting power in numbers when it comes to Music Declares Emergency's endeavor. And the next slide, because that could go on for a long time, shows us quite clearly that GENTS are now part of this wonderful international coalition. And thereby also an inauguration of the first time that Music Declares Emergency sets foot in Scandinavian soil, and hopefully this can be a catalyst for hopefully the entire musical industry in Denmark to get behind this. And I think that's a pretty logical place to start, to ask you, Lewis, what's your background and why did you found Music Declares Emergency?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very, very much for being here. It's lovely to be here. My background, I have been in the music industry all my adult life in a desperate bid to do something that didn't involve hard work. So I started out in a warehouse. I quickly got out of a warehouse and became an A&R. So I spent 5 years signing bands. From there, I went into artist management and PR and ended up setting up my own business, which is still nominally running, but Music Declares Emergency has kind of taken over my life since then. So I've worked with artists in pretty much every way you can work with an artist, and I've worked with the industry in almost every way you can work with the industry as well, both within the UK and internationally.
And so the urgency, what happened in the industry back then that made you come together and say, we need to form a coalition, we need to make...
Yeah, so, I mean, I'd always been the attraction to music as a child was partly I like music. I grew up in a house that was full of popular music. But it was also that music informed me as a person. So a lot of the things that have carried me into adult life, a lot of the influences, a lot of the things that matter to me are things I discovered through the artists I liked. Whether it be books or films or political opinion or societal change. So I've always had this belief that music is more than just entertainment. What happened to create Music Declares was that in the UK, the enthusiasm of 1997 and a Labour government after years and years of a Conservative government washed away over 10 years into a feeling that we knew what we wanted, but it wasn't coming, and that the old structures weren't working personally. And I felt that the climate crisis was clearly the most important thing we needed to address, and that everything I believe still mapped across that crisis. But we needed to look at it from a non-traditional political viewpoint. And while I was thinking all this, other people were thinking the similar thing from different angles. And I knew people in the music industry in the UK that cared about the climate crisis and wanted to see music do more. We were all a little bit perplexed at the fact that music hadn't really engaged with this. It had engaged with every big political kind of issue, right back to, you know, Elvis moving his hips on American television and people, moral outrage and so forth. So it was kind of like, well, why? We kind of knew some of the reasons. And that then coincided with Extinction Rebellion suddenly spurring into life in the UK and shutting down London. So there's all these different factors that started to front page this issue, and the culmination of it was 12 people from the UK music industry coming together with aid from Extinction Rebellion, who must be mentioned in this context, who brought us together, who all had this idea of something music could do, and all thought that what music was missing was an umbrella that we could all sit under. To bring all these disparate voices together and give us a sense of community, and crucially also give us a sense of protection, so that it wasn't just one voice speaking out every time, it was more voices speaking out. So if somebody came for us, there was a big gang that could go back for them, because that really was the discussion in 2018-19. You know, there are big forces that don't want this stuff to happen. And we need to be able, I always say, they've got the money, we've got the celebrities, you know. It's that push-pull.
The celebrities, the modern-day tribal leaders, yes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We've got the culture,
cultural
they've got the
power.
cash. Yeah. So that was the genesis of it.
And I think we should grasp onto that, and because I've gone through your list, and many of my favorite artists are there. But if we allow ourselves to imagine just for a moment, if we can pick one artist, one in the spirit of music fandom, one artist of our own favorites that we'd like to sign the declaration, who would that be?
That hasn't signed it so far?
Yeah, and let's hear from Nils and Thijs, because I bet you're music lovers yourselves.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, I think it's a very difficult question, because on one hand, it's like I think everyone should sign this declaration, and as you said, it's at the end it's a no-brainer signing it. So picking one is difficult, but I'd say maybe Justin Bieber.
Beeps.
Yeah, Beeps. He's
influential. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the second most followed person on Twitter.
That's a good
and
metric.
I feel like all the politics stuff is going on over at Twitter.
Okay.
So maybe he could pass on the message.
Yeah. What about you, Maria? What are you? Your favorite
I didn't really
bands
see
or
if he
artists?
was on, but I would say Eminem.
Eminem?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Okay.
He is my childhood love, my childhood crush. So, of course, it should be him. And I also think he has a fan base that reach out to people that are not yet engaged in the climate crisis and the urgency for action. So I would like to see him on this list.
All right. Have you had any luck with Justin Bieber and Eminem?
Not yet. Eminem is interesting because his politics have become more and more apparent. over the Trump years, and you kind of look at it and you think, well, he's probably in our club. I mean, that's the next challenge for MDE, is that there are still plenty of artists that we know are sympathetic to what we're doing, but there are still barriers to them signing.
Sitting on the fence.
Well, it's not that they're sitting on the fence, it's just that, everybody thinks that artists are in complete control of their careers. That's not the case. Even the biggest artists, if you think about the scale of their business, there are huge amounts of other people that have influence on. So, you saw that with Taylor Swift. There's that great video of Taylor Swift saying to her management, I'm going to do this. And them going, no, we don't think you should do that. And her going, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Those conversations go on all the time with artists at all levels. So it's not that simple. The one I'd love to see on there, which I'm still aiming for, is Blackpink. Because, one of the issues of the climate crisis is that the people with the most privilege are the ones that are trying to do the best work, and that's great. But the climate crisis affects the people with the least privilege, who tend to be in the global south. So the more artists that we can get who have influence in the global south, right, the more valid the conversation is. And Blackpink are, alongside a few other artists, Metallica would be another one, who are genuinely global. And those are the artists I'd like to see come on board next. But it's a process with 4 years. It takes time.
Great point. Now you're conquering Scandinavia. And Niels and Thijs, what made the difference for you? What made you sign the declaration? And what have you thought about doing differently in your roles as touring and as artists?
Yeah, on a day-to-day basis, all of this, this whole issue we're standing in front of with the climate crisis can seem very, give you a big feeling of powerlessness, because it's what can you do as an individual? You can do a cold shower, but then your shampoo is made of plastic, or you can be a vegetarian, but then the avocado is the big sinner, or it's you can't really be perfect. So that's kind of a feeling that I'm met with a lot in my everyday life, and that's also something that really makes it meaningful to come here and sign the declaration, and to go together as a community and call for political action. Is kind of the only possible solution that I see we can do together in our imperfectness. Yeah.
Wonderful. You have anything to add, Niels?
I just think that to us it's very important to emphasize that us being part of this whole project and signing the declaration doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of doubt. I think that's a very premise of the world today, that we all really want to do something, but we don't know, as Thijs says, we don't know how to do it, and we don't want to sit on some pedestal and claim to be perfect or claim to have all the answers. This is just us trying to do something instead of doing nothing, and that's our entire angle in doing this. Yeah,
definitely, just stepping into the space and being vulnerable and acknowledging that, but starting the conversation and being together in the cause.
Yes,
Maria, you must be one of the people that people look to when searching for answers, when standing in the hard dilemmas of the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. And I know that I prepared you for a question about your present work and with the Danish Society for Nature Conservation. But could you tell us, maybe link the two and say, what is the causes you're working with now, the most important and biggest ones, and what would you ask musical fans to consider?
Well, the biggest issue that's on top of my mind right now is the marine protection and how we can create a better situation for our oceans, starting in Denmark, and to get protected areas, to create awareness about the life that we have in the ocean and the importance to protect it, and also get these areas where bottom trawling is banned to restore and rebuild the ecosystems. And when it comes to culture and the culture's role in all this, to me it's so important to have the conversation that the green transition is so much more than a technological fix. We are seriously doomed if this transition is only about windmills, solar panels, electric cars, and organic farming. This is a change at the very core of our society, the foundation of our values, the way we live our lives, the consumption, the material consumption, less material consumption, less economic growth. We have to find another, or reconnect to nature and change our view of nature. And that's where I think that this declaration and this cooperation that we are a part of tonight has such a big role to play. Sapita did it in her poetry. I think you do it in your music, to try to address the core of what's wrong and why we have brought our society to the edge of extinction and chaos. And that's why I think this is so important. And on my daily life, I work with technology and new methods for fishing and green energy and everything else. And what I miss is exactly what we're doing tonight, where we come together and try to address this issue from a completely different angle. And that's why I think this is so important, and hope that this is just the start from the Danish Society for Nature Conservation to have actually completely new kinds of partnerships.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned the harm that is being done to our waters in Denmark, and that would actually entail, maybe in this context, to hack the music tastes of the farmers in Denmark and getting them on board with music declares emergency. But Maria, maybe to open up the question more, if you could have the support from the cultural sector, from the cultural industry, what would you most wish for presently in the music industry? What could they do that would help the cause of the Danish Society for Nature Conservation?
I think it's actually at the core of what I said, that we should try discussing how we can even develop more the second part of the green transition that's not spoken enough about. I mean, the change of the foundation, the cultural transition. How can we go together and change that? I think it's so difficult, but we need to change our view of nature. Today it's so strongly seen as a bunch of resources only placed here on the earth for us to explore. We need to refine our love for nature, our respect for other species, and understand that they have, and actually address through music and poetry and through the cultural and music sector, their right to be here, to be as strong as our right to be here. And I think we need to work with our language, even the way we speak about nature. It's like it's something and not life. And this work with language, with our words, and how we talk about nature and other life, I think who should start that transition and change? That has to be art, that has to be music, that has to be poetry that can inspire all of us to develop another language when we talk about nature. So that would be my wish, to help us develop a language about nature that touches us deep in our heart. Because if we shall change the way we treat our surroundings, it has to be because we love it and we care for it and can feel it deep inside of us.
Definitely. Now, guys, you work in the Danish music industry, and you must know other musical artists that might not be convinced that this is a cause to get behind, or maybe have doubts of themselves but are leaning to the other side. We know that artists like Lucas Graham and Jada have come out outspokenly behind the climate cause. But is there hope that the entire industry could get behind this, or what do you see in terms of the norms and the attitudes within the industry?
I think that the music industry in general is very in a position wanting to do something, but like ourselves, just don't know where to begin. And I think that's just like a very human thing. So I definitely think that there's a breeding ground for actually doing or like organizing, coming together as we're doing right now. I think it takes more stuff like this, as Maria is mentioning. So I don't think there's anyone not wanting to do stuff. So that's a very fortunate situation. I'd say that it's just about like actually doing it, and that's difficult enough, I'd say, obviously, but not entirely impossible.
But artists are also living off of unlimited freedom, the freedom of expression in every kind. Is it this perhaps misconception that all of the art needs to revolve around nature as a theme or an end that's also holding music artists back?
I think generally artists have always mirrored the world in which they live in, and so I think this is happening just like naturally, that this is going to be thematically it's going to be more present in the music, in the arts. I think it's already there.
Yep.
And I think it's a misconception that everything has to be about the cause in the art itself, but I think there's an energy that you can enter the room or like be present in the world wanting to change something, because I think it's also important to remember that there's so much more to the human experience than we are in the middle of this climate crisis. And if everything's going to revolve around that, I think I just don't see that happening. But I also think that's okay. But yeah, I think it's happening.
We're slowly running out of time for this panel because we also want to get on and to begin with your show that we're all looking forward to. But I've promised you to have the opportunity to ask each other some questions. Each of you would have one question to other members of the panel, if you would like. Okay. Starting with you, Lewis.
Okay. Just briefly, it's interesting what people have said, because it maps across the founding principles of Music Declares Emergency, which is to normalise getting involved with this conversation. We believe that culture can take very complex ideas and make them very simple. And I think that's something we need to do with this. We need to reduce it down to a what kind of world do you want to live in question, because that's the emotional connection we need to make with people. So I suppose my question to everybody else would be, how much do you feel that culture can lead the way on this, and in what ways would you like culture to lead it? So to the gentleman from GENTS, it would be, what kind of support do you feel artists need? And to yourself, it would be, how much do you want culture to take the lead in this and simplify the message?
The question of support. How much do you need in order to stay in this space and sustain the message?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. I think that, as I said before this, I think people within the industry really wants to do something, and I think I can't really tell what specifically that we need to actually just get it rolling, but I just see that doing stuff like that we're doing tonight, continuing the conversation can be the cradle for doing that, and that, yeah, to me it's I really honestly think that it's gonna happen anyway. I think there's no one who really doesn't want it to happen, so I can't really tell, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it's nights like these that really needs to happen, and big issues like the climate crisis and other stuff as well just takes a lot of time to take in and to feel what needs to be done, and I feel like just keep on having awareness on it, and saying out loud that we have an issue that we need to face together is the only way to overcome it, I think. Yeah.
More nights where all of this love and all of this focus is dedicating to the common goal.
For example, yeah.
I want culture to take the lead, definitely, and to build the bridge between the world when I'm mostly in the political, technological world, and society and values and foundation and the direction of where we need to go. So I really, really think that we need to stand together in this, but also that culture and art and music, poetry becomes more vibrant and more alive in the other arenas where the change has to happen. So I really, really invite even more cooperation and nights like this.
Great. Maria and Jens, do you have quick questions?
We can make it short, yeah, if you want to.
We're running out of time, but I think what we just did here really made sense. Like, you interchanged some messages, you got answers. I think we can do the rest after the concert, perhaps, and maybe just amongst the crowd with you guys. So a big round of applause for the panel. Louis Jamieson, Maria Reumert-Gerding, and Tyson Nils from GENTS. Thank you so much.